Fear is the thing that's trying to keep you small. It's the mindset that's trying to protect you and keep you in the place and the comfort of where you've always been. Love is the thing that expands. Love is the thing that takes you on the journey, right? And that's what we have to follow. That's the curiosity, right? It's just being like, screw it. I'm going to go for it and I'm going to see what's going to happen. I tell you, and I say this all the time, like I've never heard a story of a woman who's gone all in on herself and failed, because we don't freaking do it.
We are Gold Ivy.
Our mission is to empower you to own and unleash your truth.
Stories of resiliency are gold, and ivy grows in hard places.
Those hard places are what creates space for light to shine through.
You decide what works for your daily life and how to transform our lessons into your gold.
This is Ivy Unleashed,
a Gold Ivy production. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Thank you for joining us with our new setup. Never sat this way. And we have a guest in studio, which is our favorite. And someone we hardly know her, but we feel like we've known her forever. And we are so happy that you get to have her energy and hear her story. She's such a powerful woman, a powerful presence. Cari Kenzie, welcome to Ivy Unleashed.
Gosh, thanks, ladies. I'm so excited.
So happy you're here.
Sitting here with you.
This is a treat.
Yes.
This is a treat. If you are listening, this next 45 minutes to an hour is going to blow your mind, because Cari Kenzie is a force. We met Cari in Dallas, instantly fell in love.
We were on a dance floor.
Yeah.
We were on
That's
a dance
literally how we met.
Yeah, Brooke and I,
Yes.
whenever we're somewhere, if there's a DJ, there's music playing, and no one's on the dance floor, we're like, what? Why? So Brooke and I get over there. We're busting a move, and all of a sudden, this beautiful woman comes shaking it up to us, dancing with us. We're spinning each other around, and we're like, who are you? What is your name? We need to be friends.
Instantly.
And here we are.
And she's got a story. I feel like we just attract people who have incredible stories, and we get to use this platform as a vessel to share their message. And it is such an honor. So let's get into it.
Yeah. And the first thing I want to say is, when I think about Cari, I think so much about divine timing. And she says a lot in on her podcast that she doesn't believe in coincidences. And this episode happens to be airing the day of the Boston Marathon, which we didn't plan. No. This just happened, right? Which, it doesn't just happen. But so we want to talk about the Boston Marathon. And I know that's a big thing to unpack for you. Mm-hmm. But kind of get us into what the meaning of the Boston Marathon has had in your life, starting wherever you want in that story.
The crazy thing, we just looked up the other day. So my birthday happens to be on April 19th, which, you guys, is just a crazy day. If you ever want to have mind blown, just look up April 19th. It's nuts. Well, a girlfriend of mine did that the other day. And she was like, did you realize that the very first Boston Marathon was run on April 19th?
Nuh-uh.
And I was like, stop it right now. She's like, yeah. Okay.
So it starts from birth.
So it
birth. Yes. I just got full body chills.
It's so crazy. But the Boston Marathon for me in 2013 really is where my life path and my divine purpose collided in the craziest way. I was never meant to be in Boston. I was absolutely meant to be there and never meant to be there all in the same moment. I qualified to run Boston in 2010 in the Twin Cities, which, by the way, is still my absolute favorite freaking marathon. But that's where I qualified, and I qualified in 2010. You only get 2 years. Like, if you qualify, you have 2 years to run it. If you don't run it, you have to requalify. Well, in 11, I decided not to. My youngest was too young, so we were going to go in 2012. Signed up, did everything at the end of 2011, booked, ready to go. I'm in for the marathon, and I broke my hip in January of 2012. Can you even believe it?
How does one break their hip?
It's a really great question. It was just running. Like, literally, I ran 16 miles on a broken hip, and I had no clue.
God. Warrior.
I mean, mindset is everything. Just saying, like, when you're dedicated, you can do absolutely anything that you want to. Well, we went to Boston that year because I'd already booked everything.
Okay.
We land the plane there, unprecedented, never done before, never done again. They said, you know what? If you're here and you pick up your packet, but you do not cross the start line, we'll grandfather you into 2013. That's how I ended up being there. Now, why did that become like the life path and the divine purpose colliding? Because that's the year of the terrorist attack. at the finish line. And I happened to be at the finish line when that happened.
Dre, tell the people as fast as you can why Move with Gold Ivy is the last mind-body fitness program they'll ever have to buy, and how women are finally getting the transformation they're looking for.
I love a challenge. Let's go. 2 big things. 1, Move provides a fun atmosphere to work out in that actually gets you excited to show up and follow through with your goals. Not only is there an element of fun, but we've carefully curated a program that makes it as easy as possible for women to take care of themselves. And 2, a Move membership addresses every aspect of your health, mind and body. Our Move members are getting the physical transformation they've been hoping for and feeling like they've finally found the group that motivates them on a daily basis. What did I miss?
As a Move member, you receive a weekly workout plan, weekly live or Zoom workouts, an on-demand workout library, transformational quarterly reset challenges, monthly coaching calls, monthly masterminds with health experts, and a private group of motivated members for support and accountability.
It's ready for you when you're ready to boost your metabolism, confidence, and feel your absolute best. Join Move or learn more by clicking the link in the show notes, clicking the link in our bio on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, or by messaging us on any social channel at Gold Ivy Health Co.
It's your time. Move for your health, move for your confidence, move for your mental clarity, move with Gold Ivy.
I suffered crazy PTSD unknowingly because I was in the medical tent. So I immediately excused myself out of this experience because we have imposter syndrome no matter what we do, where we're going, the experience that we had. Somebody always has it worse, has a better story. People have been through this. Why can't I just get over it? And so we don't share anything. I came home, and I say when I'm speaking, I came home a spectator as opposed to a participant. What that means is I owned a multi-million-dollar marketing agency at the time, came home, went back to work the next day, watched the news with my staff. They caught the second brother. We shut off the TV and I slipped back into my life like nothing had ever happened until I became debilitatingly ill, couldn't walk up a flight of stairs unassisted, had insomnia so bad. It was like prescription sleep medications like crazy. I was having seizures standing up, couldn't sign checks. Like my entire physical being collapsed.
How long until you got home and these symptoms started?
Well, the initial symptoms started in July. Headaches, massive headaches.
So like 3-4 months?
Like 3-4 months.
Okay.
And then it just continued to spiral downhill from there. And nobody could tell me what was going on. I mean, I heard I was depressed. I heard you have anxiety. I got chronic fatigue. I mean, all of those, like, you know, I have no idea what's going on with you, but I'm going to slap a diagnosis of something so you feel a little better. And nothing for a couple of years. I mean, this took me a number of years to get over. But the one thing that shifted everything for me was this. I went into a specialist office and he looked at the charts, did all the things, and looks at me and says, "Hey, are you a runner?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, why?" He goes, "Oh, because your heart rate's really low." I was like, "Oh, I've heard that before." Like, okay, not a big deal. And then he said this. He goes, "You know what? I don't have anything that's going to be able to help you. Like, there's nothing in my toolkit that's going to make you feel any better. But here's what I can tell you. You're not depressed, because I've never known a runner to be depressed." And I didn't realize like exactly what was happening in that moment. I just knew it changed everything for me. And what I understood later is that he saw me. Like, he didn't look at the chart. He didn't like try to figure it out based on the symptoms I was having. He literally looked at me and was like, "This is what I see in you. And because I see this in you, this is what I could tell you." And that's where I had to begin to choose me. I was the only one who was going to be able to fix it. And that's how I ended up overcoming all of it.
So did you have to like miss work? Are you still going to work feeling crappy?
Like, how are you being a human, a functioning human of society during this? A multi-million-dollar agency.
Yeah.
Marketing agency.
Yeah. It, like every high achiever does, type A person, you show up.
Push through.
Like, you push through, you show up. I would go to the emergency room on Friday after work. I would be there until Sunday night, and I would get up and I would go back to work on Monday. And then I would do it again the following weekend. Like, nobody on my staff knew. I mean, at one point I had to hand over to my operations manager. I was like, "I can't sign these checks," and handed him over. And then he had to take over that part of things because my hands would cramp. So my muscles would cramp so bad that I like couldn't stir food. I couldn't cook. It was crazy. But nobody knew anything was going on. Like you just continue to show up, but you do so until it's like that last piece of duct tape gets pulled off Humpty Dumpty. And then you're like,
I have no choice.
I have no choice. I have no choice.
So this doctor visit was that moment for you?
The last piece of duct tape? No, it was, I would say that was almost opening for me to do something different. It like gave me permission to go a different direction. I had navigated through all of the doctors and the emergency rooms and the Mayo Clinic, all the things that I knew up to that moment. And then when I saw him and I like the decision, and it was kind of like this unknown, unconscious decision of like, it's up to me. I got to figure this thing out. Then I started listening to my intuition. And so like no coincidences, right? We mentioned this. I would listen to a podcast. And if the podcast mentioned something and then I heard it another couple times or, you know, somebody else would speak it, I go, well, that's what I need to be tested for. That's how I found all of the things that were wrong. Chronic Lyme disease, it's because I heard a podcast mentioned it and then I saw it somewhere else and something else popped up and I found a doctor, which was in 2014, almost impossible in the state of Iowa to find a doctor who would treat Lyme disease. Found somebody, did a test. Yep, that's what's happening. That's how I navigated through because nobody else could tell me what was going on.
Well, it is. You took matters in your own hands, and I'm going to learn all of the things and trust whatever I'm being guided towards. Yeah. So what was that? Like you mentioned Lyme. Was that the first?
That was the first thing that I uncovered. Yeah. It was Lyme disease. Then it was Hashimoto's, thyroid conditions. Epstein-Barr came later in the process, but I knew I had multiple autoimmune conditions. I would say probably I knew the autoimmunity first, because Raynaud's is one of those like obvious when you're out in the cold and your fingers are white and pain. And so that was one of the first things, but that's how I started to uncover all of it. And then I ended up at a conference in 2016 because now I've really started to trust my intuition. I think that's one thing people don't, you have to like trust it the first time. You have to follow the curiosity. And then when you trust it and it's validated, then you begin to trust it more. And the more you trust it and the more it's validated, you're like, okay, I'm onto something. So in 2016, this email comes across of a coaching program that Dave Asprey was putting on for Bulletproof. And it came across, I was like, yep, I'm doing it. Gut reaction, didn't tell anybody, didn't have a conversation with anybody, didn't matter the cost. I was like, I'm doing this, signed up, flew out. And that one decision, not because of the coaching program, but because of something that somebody said to me at that conference, changed everything for me.
What was it?
It was a gal that I went to a neurofeedback booth, and I was telling her kind of what was going on. At this point, it was like chronic Lyme disease was the big thing, and insomnia, because I hadn't, literally, you guys, I hadn't slept in, at this point, it would have been 3 years. I mean, I would lay awake night after night after night till like 5:30 in the morning. And after about 3 or 4 nights of this, you just get pissed at the world. Like, you're
How
like,
could you not?
everybody else in the world is sleeping and I'm sitting here and you're crying and you're angry. And then I'd pass out for a couple hours and I'd be back up. So I go into this booth, neurofeedback, and I'm telling her what's going on. And she says, you know what? I had chronic Lyme disease too. And I know this gal and she does this thing. Let me give you her number and you should call her. Well, you get to a point, you guys, I don't care what she does. I like voodoo dolls.
I hear you.
But it doesn't matter, right?
Trying
Like
it.
sign me up. So I called her up. And I always joke. I'm like, so I call her and she's like, so tell me about your childhood, which is not what she said, but that's exactly what it felt like. Because I remember responding to her going, that's not why I called you. I called you because I have Lyme disease. But she opened a door for me. I didn't understand in that moment how interconnected everything was. Because I think we're born into a world of separation where everything is separate from something we don't understand. Just back in my corporate world, the whole idea was don't take your personal life into work, hang it up on the tree outside, right? And you walk, like literally, this is what we were told. You walk in and you can pick it back up on your way out. Like you have to keep it separate. Same with your physical body. Like whatever's happening physically, you get a medication, you get a surgery, you go to a doctor, but that doesn't affect mentally, right? Everything was separate. And all of a sudden, she brought the world together. So the things that I've been through, like this traumatic experience that I had in Boston and the stuff that I went through as a kid, that's why I'm sick. And once I understood that and could start to shift, the insomnia was gone overnight.
What?
Literally overnight. I'm not.
So
kidding.
what did this lady tell you? She said, what was your childhood like? Or so it felt.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. No, she actually just started to ask me questions about my experiences, about my life, about the trauma that I had been through. And the questions would lead into what was being held subconsciously in the mind and the limitations that we have and the belief systems that we carry based on the experiences, right? And so we would start diving. She'd ask me questions, and all of a sudden I would be a 5-year-old little girl who is going through some situation with her sister or her parents, and I've caused some form of a limiting belief based on that. And we would shift that limiting belief, and my physical being would shift, and I'd feel better. And this went on. I mean, I'd be super exhausted, really tired, not feeling well. I'd call her up. We'd work on something. I'd feel better. Then I was like, okay, well, I don't want to wait 2 weeks to get on somebody's schedule. Like, this is crap. I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to figure this out for myself. And that's when I took the deep dive in.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Okay. So from
So many questions.
So many questions. Yeah. And like when you hear deep dive, you know, that to me is a big fat question mark of what does that look like, right? Because you're getting these clues that this has something to do with the trauma I've been through. You're starting to piece it together. But then when you try and do it on your own and you're just kind of new at listening to your instincts and going with your gut, what does that look like to start that deep dive?
I read every book. I listened to every podcast. I took every class. I took a deep dive in. I really did. I mean, I spent weeks away from home in classes and trainings and working on myself, working with other individuals, really starting to understand that subconscious mind, the limitations, NLP, hypnosis, like all of the different things that we have the ability to be able to do in order to understand our own limitations. That's the deep dive that I had to take. And even today, I still have people who will help. Like, we all have blind spots, right? So I can do a lot and I can figure out a lot that's happening in my own mind. I've learned a observation and an awareness, but it took a lot of sitting in the depths. And I think that's the hardest part. So I can go to the classes and I can read the books, but unless I'm willing to turn around and look at it and sit in the pain of it, nothing's going to change. And that's a courage and a bravery that everybody has, but people don't want to harness because of the fear. And I remember there was one day I'd gone out running with my kids. Running was very hard for me for years. And we were out with and my middle son was running with me. And I don't know why, he just didn't pick up that I'd been in Boston. And he made some comment to me. He's like, oh my gosh, you were there when the bombs went off? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, did you feel like you couldn't breathe all of a sudden? It's a really odd question. Mm-hmm. I've learned to listen to everything that people say because they're always reflecting something back to you. And when he said that, I thought, that's why I have such a problem running, because I wasn't able to get full capacity of breath. So then I thought, well, I want to get to the other side of that. So I went home and put on Patriots Day, the movie about the Boston Marathon. That's something that people typically don't do. Right. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to understand, I wanted to feel the emotions so that I could question the emotions and figure out what was still being held in the body. And it was the most visceral experience I have ever in my life had watching a movie. And I was grateful that I had people there to support me. But that's what we have to do. We have to sit in the chaos of it. We have to sit in the confusion and then just start to question around what is happening. Why am I feeling this way? What is this? What do I need to observe here? What do I need to heal in this moment? And so the deep dive comes in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I think the curiosity and the questioning, that's what allows you to get unstuck.
Yeah.
So a lot of people stay in the pain. it becomes their identity.
It really
but
does.
for you, you said absolutely not.
No.
This is not my truth.
No. And that's always been my thing. Like I do not adhere to identities. I do not adhere to like even chronic Lyme disease. Like you'd go into platforms, right? Especially when you're healing through different things, you want to go in and find the people so that you can learn the things. And I would go in on Facebook and I would join a group, and within 2 weeks I was out because I'm watching everybody's there claiming it, and it's the identity of it. And my Lyme disease, I'm like, what? No. Like,
I want this.
What's the power of NLP and hypnosis and subconscious work that I think nowadays it's becoming way more popular, or maybe just because we're so in this space. But I hope that there is a shift. And it's people like you that are making it possible, and people are seeing their story in you and, oh, okay, I don't have to live with that. But the work you did, it takes a lot. Like you said, it takes courage, it takes bravery. So when did you start to connect the dots between the Boston Marathon and the symptoms you're going through? Was it what your son said? Or was it before then?
No, it was before that.
Okay.
Yeah, it was absolutely before that. And it's just a matter of the way that if people ask questions out of not a curiosity because I want to know, but a curiosity because you need to know. Does that make sense? So if I'm sitting and having a conversation with you, there's a part that's going to have that, what do you call it? That voyeuristic. I was like, ooh, I wanted to give me the details, right? Good. That's a different way of asking a question than if I'm just going to sit and get curious, because I do want to understand. I have compassion, but it's not for me to know. It's for you to discover. Like, that's a different way to ask a question. And when you do that, I'm allowing you the opportunity to be able to see things, your life, your limitations, your beliefs, the things that you say from a different perspective. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Oh, I didn't see how that connected, right? But when you do that, it opens you to a different kind of power. It takes you out of that victim space, because all of a sudden I'm starting to see things from a new perspective. And even for me to sit here today and be like, you guys, I totally created being in Boston in 2013. You're like, what? I'm like, no, look at what happened. Like, who breaks their hip running at 37 years old, right? In such a way that you're still able to run and you end up in Boston the next year. Like, if you have the opportunity to look at life in that way, then I have complete control, complete creative ability, and power over that situation. I no longer sit as a victim to it. That's what we get to do when we harness that curiosity and that courage to be able to look back at moments to find the power and the belief within to bring that forward into your purpose.
Well, and it's so rewarding what you've done, and you've taken ownership, and you can be proud of this journey. And what I keep thinking about are people that refuse to face what they know, because it is, like we said, it's challenging to think about what you've been through. And also, you can gaslight yourself or be gaslighted by others. And I know that's something that you face too, where it's like, okay, well, so-and-so lost their husband to cancer, or, it could always be so much worse, or so-and-so was just finishing when it happened. They weren't in the med tent like me, And so I think there's a couple different things that can happen. And I'm curious for you, if you were to think about the listener who's listening right now, why it's beneficial to do this dig deep, dig deep into what you've been through, and why it's beneficial to do this type of work so you know what's underneath the hood.
Well, I think first and foremost, to address what you just talked about, we do that all the time. It doesn't matter if you could have been standing in the epicenter right next to the bomb. You could be the one with stage 4 cancer, and you will still excuse yourself out of your experience. And it all comes back to our inability to understand our significance and our own worth. I mean, I have spoken in front of audiences and had people come up afterwards and go, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that I wasn't allowing myself the experience because I didn't die, because I didn't have to have chemo, because I was standing 10 feet away from the shooter, because I wasn't shot even though the bullet whizzed right past my head. Like, it's crazy the things that we do. And it all comes down to, and this is why it goes back into childhood, it all comes down to the fact that we don't understand how important we are, how valuable we are, how every single experience that we have gone through is worthy of expression. It is worthy of emotion. And we get to honor that. And when you do that and you honor the story, that's where healing happens. And not just for you, but for everybody around you. I have watched my children change because of the healing that I have done for myself. That's the power that we have, is when we truly honor who we are and we honor our experiences and we share our stories and we heal through our stories so that the voice can be heard from a place of power, then other people find relatability in it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I sat with a girlfriend in the beginning of 22, and she was having a conversation about the divorce that she had been through. And the whole time she was talking, I was like, were we married to the same guy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, wow. But just in her sharing her experience that she had been through, that she had healed through, I was able to see myself, and it gave me permission to make my own choice, to understand my own significance. Like, that's the power we have when we look at these situations and we go, you know what? I went through that. I experienced that. And the emotion doesn't carry me anymore. I'm not buried underneath it. I'll talk to people still today who weren't even in Boston but had family there, or who were standing 20 feet away from me. And the whole time they're talking, their heads will go down like this, right? Or they'll cry like tear, and you'll feel the energy of fear come up around them. They're still buried underneath it. If we can share, if we can heal, if we can honor where we've been and allow other people to see that, it will allow them to honor where they've been. That's the entire reason why I did the deep dive work. Yeah, it was to understand myself, and it's because I love myself enough to not sit in the energy of that.
Yeah, and I'd encourage people too to use this as a reflection of, you know, if for any reason you're triggered by what Cari's saying, wondering like, what is it within me that hasn't had space to heal?
Yeah.
Or that, you know, you might have resentment that maybe you feel like you've been through something worse or something lighter, something like, as you're comparing your trauma to Cari's, because this is what we do. It's a natural thing to do, to think about, what haven't I expressed? What could use a little bit of attention in my life or care, or could I just journal about maybe by myself to kind of start this healing? Because I think when we think of someone else's trauma, you naturally inside are like, God, what have I been through? And like, have I actually sorted this out? Because sometimes we talk about it, but I do think what you're saying is you not only did the deep dive of uncovering what it is you needed to face, but then how does my brain work? And how is this buried in my subconscious? And what kind of coach could I hire to help me through this, hold space for me as I uncover these things that you don't know what's going to come up. You don't know how the emotions, like you said, the visceral response, like having people you mentioned around you. So who are those people for you that made you feel safe to uncover all of these emotions and kind of work through them?
Well, it's finding the people who've navigated through their own stuff, right? It's finding the people who understand and who can hold that space. Who will ask the questions, like I said earlier. I'm asking the question more because I want you to have an awareness more than I need to understand. And then to not be triggered by it, and to allow you to continue doing that dive into the mind and follow that journey with you. Your mind is a maze. Like, it's not going to take you in a linear line. I promise you. You're going to end up like, I was in Boston, then I was in high school, then I was a little kid, then I was married, then I was back here. And it, like, nothing makes sense, and it all makes perfect sense. But it's finding the people who can really, they ask the questions, they can hold the space, and they have the ability to understand what's happening in the subconscious mind, because your conscious mind is going to play all sorts of games with you. I mean, it's going to justify and defend all day long. I've had people come in and we'll sit down and work, or we'll be, online over Zoom, and they're like, I can do dances around a therapist. I'm like, oh, honey, I totally get that, right? Like, you can be really good at creating the stories and like you said, gaslighting yourself through the situation. You need somebody who's going to like call you on your crap. Legit. Somebody who's going to be like, I love you, and I think that's amazing, and I love what your mind's doing here, but let me tell you what's actually happening. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, shit. She just caught me. And you feel good at the same moment, right? That's the kind of person that you need to come alongside you, not somebody who's going to have you having the conversation and telling the story over and over and over again. I mean, I've talked with women, they're like, I had to sit and write page after page after page after page of the story to desensitize myself. And I'm like, you know what you're doing? You're ingraining it within yourself. You're not desensitizing it, right? It's like, let's go in, let's touch on it for a moment, and let's get rid of it. You don't want to sit, you got to sit there for a hot minute, like not for months, not for years. And the key that I would tell anybody who's going to dive into any kind of work, your biggest fear is going to be this: it will take me out. It's always the fear. Like, if I go back and look at it, that's the thing that's going to take me out. And I tell you what, sweetie, it is not. Like, you've already been through it. You did the hardest part. Now you just got to take that same amount of curiosity and courage to go back and touch on it for just a minute, have somebody who can hold the space around it, and you're going to navigate through it and actually heal it so you no longer have to deal with it.
So when you went back to the bombing, what did that look like for you? What did you shift that allowed you to be free?
Today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Every episode of Ivy Unleashed is dedicated to empowering you to take ownership of your health. And what it really comes down to is prioritizing your mental health.
We've both seen the beauty and growth that therapy can bring and are thrilled to partner with BetterHelp to allow you the opportunity to feel heard and seen by a professional. The National Alliance on Mental Health reports that 155 million people live in a designated mental health professional shortage area, and BetterHelp is working to close that gap.
I've personally used BetterHelp and loved it because it was all online, making it super convenient. The biggest piece for me was how affordable it is. I was able to choose the therapist that met my needs. I came in with wanting to work on childhood trauma and anxiety, and it was unbelievable to see how many options I had with all the different backgrounds of therapists.
With BetterHelp, you have access to a network of over 30,000 licensed and experienced therapists. Therapy is all about deepening your self-awareness. And sometimes we can't see our own patterns and behaviors until we talk them out and get an unbiased perspective.
It's really nice to have someone who doesn't know you and has the professional background to help you thrive in your daily life. It has made the world of a difference with every relationship in my life, including the one with myself.
To get started, all you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire about your needs and preferences and choose your therapist out of the options they give you. You can talk to your therapist however you feel comfortable, whether it's via text, chat, phone, or video call. Also, you can switch therapists at no additional charge until you find the right fit for you.
The best investment you can make is in yourself. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/goldivy. That's betterhelp.com/goldivy.
Take the first step to inner peace and freedom today. And now back to the show.
It's taking ownership. It's seeing it from a different perspective. It was forgiveness, a lot of forgiveness, actual gratitude, and then really just seeing different elements of it. Like survivor's guilt's a real thing. Mm-hmm. It just is. And so I had to look at that and understand why I made the decision I made when I walked outside of that tent and turned right instead of left. Left would have been back into the chaos, and right would have been to, freedom, so to speak. I had to figure out for me, why did I make that decision, right? Because you're going to judge yourself. Mm-hmm. Once I figured that out and I understood, not from like this conscious mind, I can justify it, but from like a deep understanding, knowing, I could release it. And then it starts to look like a Polaroid picture. It's what it looks like. You don't have that charge anymore when you sit and you look at it.
Wow. I feel like this could be a movie, right? Yeah. It could be a movie because I feel like it's, when you're the outsider of it, you're like, wait, what does that feel like to consider a deeper meaning to going left and right, and what are the questions your coach is asking you in the midst of this, or is this something you're doing on your own? And so it feels like, I don't know, I'm just picturing a movie. I feel like you should put this into a movie for sure. Because now I'm like, I want to watch this. I want to know more about this work. But I know something you talk a lot about is manifesting versus creating. Mm-hmm. And I know, just from what we've talked about with this, you're like, I created this scenario and I've created this. And so I would love for you to talk a bit about that, like the difference between manifesting versus creating and the power that we all have as we move forward with this knowing Tell us about that.
Yeah, people don't like that conversation.
I know, I do though. It's so interesting.
They're like, no. Because here's the thing. When people think about manifesting, we think about all the amazing stuff, right? So I'll take even this morning as an example, right? So manifesting, I was like, oh, I had this amazing hotel room. And like, what hotel room do you walk into that has heated floors in the bathroom?
Oh, what?
Give me.
Dimmers on every light. I was like, what is this space? This is a look at what I manifested, right? And then a half an hour later, after I get done with my run and I go upstairs and I'm in the run, there's like no hairdryer. I'm like, what is that, right? And I could go, oh, well, crap, well, they didn't put a hairdryer in there, and I can start blaming all the situations around as opposed to going, okay, that's really cute. Why did I create that? Like, I created this amazing experience. Why could the amazing experience not carry through everything? Why did I need to create that moment of a hiccup? Do you see what I'm saying? So we always look at manifesting as like, I've made the list and I've done the things, and high five me and let's celebrate because all of this amazing stuff has happened. But the second you stub your toe, we step out of that creative or creator ability. And I go, no. That's when you really got to dive in. That's when you've got to go, ooh, why did I need to create an opportunity to stub my toe? Why did I need to place myself in that position? Now, here's the thing. Would I consciously have ever put myself in a position to be in Boston? No. Would I consciously have ever placed myself in a position the very next marathon I ran to not remember crossing the finish line and to collapsing three times in the last mile? No, I consciously would not have done that. However, I also know that there's a higher aspect to me. I know there's a wiser version of me. I know there's a part of me that is constantly looking to evolve, constantly looking to be better, constantly looking to learn something and to shift the way that I'm navigating through life. That part of me will stub my toe. That part of me will create opportunities for me to learn lessons. That's what I mean is the difference between manifesting and creating, because we are creating all the time. We are manifesting. Manifesting is just demonstration, okay? That's all it means. If you look it up and you go back to the etymology of manifesting, it means demonstrating, okay? Your mind is constantly demonstrating to you your belief systems based on the reflection of the reality you've created.
Damn!
Say more.
God! I love this so much. And I love the words you're using because it's a way to look at it with gratitude and opportunity instead of poor me, of course I did, who did this, blame, shame. It's like, okay, stub my toe. Ooh, what am I going to learn here?
Yes.
Or what is my higher self trying to teach me here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or show me?
Like, what's the opportunity here?
That's
There's
so
got to be
juicy.
something, right?
That's so juicy.
And think about that. If you truly could take your mind and shift it in that way, you could go, why do I have a cold right now? Why did I lose my voice? What was happening? I mean, my business partner did this to me a couple of weeks ago. I had this horrible cold and we're just like witnessing it, right? And she go, so what's going on with the cold, Cari? And I'm like, yeah, I know. It's a value thing. I understand. It's a value thing. I just got to figure out what it is,
Value
right?
thing.
So,
What do you mean?
So your physical being will communicate your soul to you all the time. Okay? Your
I believe this so much.
Okay, sorry, I'm back in.
The physical aspect of who you are is simply a communication of your soul.
Okay.
Things are out of alignment. If you are not living in vitality and health, it's because something is out of alignment and it's something that needs to be addressed. If you get a cold, if you have a virus, it is all going to stem back to an issue of value. Either not understanding your value, imposter syndrome is going to come into that, feeling like you have to give up your value for something. Yeah. So when she asked me, she's like, so what's going on with the cold? And I was like, yeah, it's got something to do with value. And then if you don't address it, here's what happens. It amplifies itself. Have you ever noticed that? Like when you stub your toe and you don't ask the question and then you freaking stub it again and then you don't ask the question and you drop a steel like water bottle that's full of water and ice on your foot. This has totally happened to me. And finally you go, okay, what's going on here? Right? It will amplify. So mine got to a point where I like lost my voice, couldn't get out of bed. And I was like, this is ridiculous. What is going on? So I literally had to sit in meditation, ask the questions, figure out what was happening in my reality. What were the conversations I was having? What was going on in at home, at work? Once I figured that out, I got my voice back in 5 minutes. Like, that's the power we have when you understand I am creating every experience, every single thing, and not out of punishment, not out of any reason other than I am here to learn, I am here to evolve, and I am here to be the best damn version of the person that I can be.
I think that's tricky because one way you could look at that is to be really critical of yourself. Like, why am I doing this to myself? Like, what's wrong with me? What haven't I addressed? I feel like you could play the blame game because if there's a reason and you want to find it, you're going to be the reason. Mm-hmm. So how do you stay out of that judgment zone and be kind to yourself in the midst of figuring this out?
Great question.
Yeah. So here's the thing. You will fall into it. And it's totally okay because I will too for a hot minute, right? I'll be like, oh, this sucks. Why is this, And then it's just having an awareness. And how I have to look at it, and sometimes even with my clients, I'll have to get them out of their own space and go, okay, so if your kid, if your spouse, if your best friend, right? We can pull ourselves away far enough if we start looking at it in somebody else. It is the more you question and the more you dive in, and the more you look at yourself through the lens of the creator, the more you're going to have the opportunity to be able to sit as an awareness to it and observe it. And if you can observe, if you understand the consciousness, think about this. You ever have conversations with yourself?
All day.
Yeah. Who are you having a conversation with? Think about that. Mm-hmm. It is your awareness that is observing the thoughts that you're having that is causing you to have a conversation.
It's kind of creepy, but cool.
But cool, right?
Yeah.
So if I can take that and go, I just want to be the awareness that is observing either the thought that I'm having, the conversation that I'm having, or the experience that I'm having, then that awareness can ask a question. So I'm going to be aware of it instead of getting drawn into it. I don't want to play the drama game. I don't want to have an internal battle. I don't want to go back and forth. You're an idiot. No, you're not. No, I want to go, you're an idiot. Why do I think I'm an idiot? Where's that coming from? Mm-hmm. Who's saying that?
Mm-hmm. It's like an unbiased.
It is. You have to take yourself out of it.
Wow. Everyone listening, I'm sure they feel how I am right now. We're just like, I'm going to need to rewind. I'm going to need to re-listen to this. The human mind is so deep. Mm-hmm. But everything you're saying is so empowering. It's that what you're going through right now, you might be creating it. You are creating it is what you're saying. Mm-hmm. That also means that you can have a different reality by choice.
By choice.
That if you don't like where you're at, you can shift some things.
You can. We just forget that we have choice. That's the one thing that we forget consistently, that we have choice. That we can make a different decision, that we can look at something differently. And when you understand that, then everything begins to change because the mind is wickedly creative. It is there to protect you. It's an amazing protector. And it's also there to solve problems. So if you're running a pattern, if you find yourself in a situation over and over and over again, then maybe ask your mind, what problem are you trying to solve? What are you trying to figure out? And why do you need to figure that out? Because a lot of times things will happen to people and you'll go, why? Why did they do? And then you're trying to understand the opposing force. And I go, you're never going to understand the opposing force because you don't have the capacity in your mind to be the opposing force. Be grateful for that. Mm-hmm. Be grateful I don't get it, right? But when we can start to look at things from this perspective and go, what? I have that ability? I'm that freaking powerful? And I understand abundance because now I can see it as I get to create all of it. I don't have to wait for somebody else's permission. I don't have to wait for somebody else to shift it. I don't have to wait for somebody else's forgiveness. That's an amazing state of being.
I'm curious what else you saw shift other than your health when you made these changes. You just mentioned abundance.
Oh my gosh.
How has life changed?
My entire life has changed. My entire life. One of the first things that happened was I received a text message in the beginning of 2019 still in my business at this time. I developed a management team who'd taken over. I was sitting outside of it because I knew that somehow this was my work, and got a text message from a peer buddy of mine. He's like, hey, if you ever think about selling your business, give me a call. Let's talk. I could offer you a multiple of what you could get anywhere else.
This is your multi-million marketing agency? Okay, just following.
And I immediately texted him back, I think you caught me on a good day. That was the gut. And then, so you send the text, you're like, shit, what did I just do? And I sat back and I sat in meditation, and I knew it was part of my divine purpose because I asked. Like, you begin to trust, you follow your intuition, you're starting to trust it, you're seeing the signs, you're getting the validation, the more you trust, right? So I sat and I was like, all right, God, is this what I'm supposed to do? Yep. Is this part of my divine timing? Yep. I sold the business. That was in the end of January. The business was sold on March 18th of that year, and I spent 30 days of that in Mexico. Wow. It was the easiest thing ever. Easiest. Now, crazier thing to that, I had a trade show and event marketing firm.
2020.
2020 decimated the entire industry. The entire industry. I would have been out of business. I would have been bankrupt. Like, I think about all of the things that would have happened based on that.
Because the world literally shut down on March 18th.
Well, completely shut down one
Which
year
was
later.
yesterday.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Isn't that crazy? Yeah. Totally shut down. So because of that situation, and because of the journey that I had to navigate to understand, I get to create, I trust my intuition, I get to have curiosity. And every time I do that, I will find clarity. In that moment, I found clarity. Is this what I'm supposed to do? Yes. And I followed through with it, and it took me on the trajectory of what I'm currently on. Like, it has changed my entire life.
I think we should talk a minute about intuition, because a lot of women listening, it's so cloudy. It's so noisy. They are so out of touch with that intuition. You keep mentioning meditation, which I know is a tool for you. It's a tool for us. What are some of those tools that you have that have allowed you to hear those downloads that you're getting? Trust that intuition.
The first thing is you can't question. You can't question. And I mean that from anytime you question a thought that comes into your head, or an idea that comes into your head, or you get that moment and it's like, oh, you should go do this, right? I was out running a few weeks ago, and this was right about the time that my business partner and I were trying to figure out, like, do we do this thing? Do we not do this thing? And I'm running down the street, and I just get this thought of, like, I go the same route pretty much every day. And it was like, no, you should go left today. And I fought back. Internally, I fought back, and I was like, no, I don't know if I really want to run by the school. And my body turned left. It was like I had no choice. My body turned left. I ran down the street, and there she was walking her dog. And we live like a half a mile away from each other, never see each other, right? It's those moments of the signs. The more we question the ideas that we have, the more we shut down the intuition. Okay. So if you're driving your car and you get the nudge, you need to turn right. Turn right. Just turn right and see where it takes you. Okay. Because the more you do that, the more you have that little voice that comes up that says, hey, do this, go do this, grab this for dinner. The more you trust and the more you acknowledge, the more it's going to open up to you. It's when we question that it shuts down. And like I said, it could be those little tiny things in the beginning. It's not the great big ahas. Now, the great big ahas definitely come, and those are the things we totally shove off to the side.
You know what I'm thinking about right now, though, is like the people that grew up that weren't allowed to have a voice or creativity or a mind of their own, because I grew up in a household where I had a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
I didn't have anybody telling me where I had to be, when I had to be. And so if I had a creative idea, I could explore it. And so I feel like maybe that's why I trust my inner knowing. I trust myself. I've always been really confident because I've been able to show myself this works.
Yep.
Cross the street and go into the church and see what it's like in there. Oh my gosh,
Totally.
It's sweet. Right? But a lot of people, they had really strict parents, or
Yes.
they were a part of a religious something where it was really hard to like think a different way.
Yeah.
You know? And so I'm like, I just want to take away any guilt or shame you might have about not knowing how to do this, or like, of course you question yourself because you've been questioned your whole life, or you haven't had that freedom. And so I love how you're saying to like, trust it.
Yeah, my kids say that. They can't stand school. Because seriously, because they don't get to think creatively in school. It's like they go in to sit down and do a math problem, and you can't even creatively figure out how to do the math problem and do it your own way. You have to do it a particular way. This has been ingrained in us since we were kids.
And you have to show how you got to the idea too. So, because we were talking, I was on Cari's podcast yesterday, and we were talking about how we have some really brilliant kids that their brains work really fast, really creatively. And school's hard for them, not because school's hard, but because they
are put in a box.
They're put in a box. And and so, of course, and we all have been in school. And so it's natural, I think, to know that, okay, I might have a quirky idea that feels weird in my body, but everything's telling me to go left. Just test it, just go left and see what happens.
Yes, that's what we have to do. And it's because as kids, it was ingrained in us to not turn left because somebody told us we had to turn right. So it's like baby steps, right? I mean, babies got to crawl, they got to scoot, and then they got to crawl, and then they got to walk, but they got to fall down a whole bunch of times before they can figure it out. It's the same thing we have to do with our intuition.
And it might be unfamiliar, right? It might be a new business idea that you're like for me, I'm like, I'd never own my own business. And all of a sudden I'm like, well, I'm going to listen to this creative idea today because Elizabeth Gilbert told me I should. Yeah. And I'm like, I've had this idea 50,000 times. And today I'm saying yes to it, because it is unfamiliar or really creative and it's a little out there, but like, that's how beautiful things are born. That's how newness happens, but it's unfamiliar. So it feels wrong sometimes, or it feels like, ugh, scary. But our intuition is so strong. And I think I'm so glad we're talking about it in this way that I think feels graspable if you're just getting started.
Yeah.
And if it's not, re-listen 17 times until you're like, okay.
But also what Cari's saying is this is a deep dive. Like you're talking to someone who has done so much work. This wasn't an overnight aha moment. It was practice. It was reading. It was going to conferences. It was surrounding yourself with like-minded people or people that you valued how they were thinking so you could start to adopt that thinking.
Well, yeah, and it's a lot of questioning of yourself and it's a lot of doubting of yourself. And I mean, I will ask that question of people when they come on my podcast, right? They're like, yeah, so in that moment I made a decision. And I go, did it change everything when you made that decision, right? Because you hear that a lot. It's like, in that moment, I made a decision and everything changed. And I go, no, it did not. Like, we'd love to say it did. So I just want the listeners to know, it doesn't happen like, a lightning bolt, generally speaking. It's like you make a decision and then you're going to question it and you're going to doubt it, but you just got to keep moving towards it, right? It's just continue following the curiosity. You're going to fall down. You're going to feel like an idiot. You're going to doubt yourself, but then just have that thing you want that's different than the thing that you currently have. You need to have something that kind of sits like that carrot out in front of you. For me, it was health. I was not going to sit in a position where I couldn't run, where I couldn't be with my kids, where I didn't have the energy to do the things that I wanted to do. When you have that, when you're at that point where you're like, you know what, I'm done with this corporate job. I'm done with this thing. I have got to figure the other thing out. That's when you will open yourself up to that intuition. That's when you will open yourself up to curiosity and you allow yourself to follow it.
If this isn't divine timing, I don't know what is. Brooke, do you want to tell people why this is divine timing?
I put my 2 weeks into my corporate job yesterday. Woo-hoo! I listened to that little inner knowing. I was like, this is terrifying. This is scary, but it won't shut up. Yes. And I'm sick of hearing myself say, I'm working on getting out of my corporate job. I'm working on...
Yes.
Okay, so just do it. Figure it out. I keep thinking, what if I get hit by a car tomorrow?
Yes.
And I'm going to, look back from heaven and be like, damn, I wish I would have, I'm going to cry right now thinking of it. And I feel like that's something we all have the ability to. What isn't scary in this world? What is promised? Nothing. And I would rather be poor and happy than be making all this money and, feel so out of alignment. Mm-hmm. But that's also a mindset of why do I have to be out of alignment to be making money? What if I'm not making money because I'm out of alignment staying in this job?
Yes.
And that is something that I doubt myself all of the time. But I think that's just my ego protecting me, right? It's the mindset that I have. It's I need to keep being curious with this and trusting and following Because life is too damn short.
It really is. It really is. I heard this brilliant line yesterday. So I've been listening to You're a Badass at Making Money by Jen Sincero.
So
seriously.
good.
It's on
I should
repeat.
reread that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. It's so good. But yesterday when I was listening to it, she said, fear is just thinking that you can predict the future.
Ooh.
And I was like, oh,
God, I love
that's
her.
good, right? But think about that. If you're sitting in fear, it's because you think that you can predict what's going to happen. You have no freaking clue. And the more you sit in that fear, the less you have the ability to love. And the less you have the ability to love, the less abundant you're going to be, right? Because the fear is ego. Fear is the thing that's trying to keep you small. It's the mindset that's trying to protect you and keep you in the place and the comfort of where you've always been. Love is the thing that expands. Love is the thing that takes you on the journey, right? And that's what we have to follow. That's the curiosity, right? It's just being like, screw it. I'm going to go for it and I'm going to see what's going to happen. I tell you, and I say this all the time, like I've never heard a story of a woman who's gone all in on herself and failed because we don't freaking do it.
Okay, Cari
And I
Kenzie.
think this reminds me, and I think it's fascinating because before we started recording, I said to Cari, I'm trying to drop the how. The how is not my job. The what and the why is my job, and the how will play out.
Yes.
So will you talk about that?
Yes. You have to release attachment to the outcome. You do. You're not supposed to know the how. You're just supposed to allow. That's it. Because the more you try to figure out the how, the more you're going to stumble and fall because you're going to feel like you're doing it wrong. And we get caught and attached to the outcome. When I say you have to follow the curiosity, you can have I have a goal. Let's say I have a goal, but I'm not so freaking attached to that goal that I don't allow myself to follow a journey. So we met at the conference last year. This is I'll keep this one quick, but I was sitting and Jen always does her meditation at the beginning. She's like, imagine it's a year from now and you're walking into this room. Okay. And so I already know where she's going with this. And I sit there and I've got my eyes closed and she starts into it. And I immediately hear a voice in my head that goes, you didn't do it, did you? And I was like, dang, right? Because I had all these ideas of all these things I was going to accomplish. Okay. All these things that I was going to accomplish and I hadn't accomplished them. Right. So immediately my head goes into that. Well, you didn't do it, did you? And then right after goes, oh, but you did because you walked in here more confident than you've ever been. You walked in here more independent, more free, like all of the emotions, everything that I wanted, I had. And then what it showed me is it said, had you accomplished all of those things in order to have that confidence, you wouldn't truly have the confidence you need because all of that confidence would be reliant on the things that you created and not on you. So you have to look at that when you're stepping into something and go, okay, I know that this is the thing that I desire, but I'm just going to follow the path and allow it to take me whatever direction that it wants to take me. And that's where you end up at that amazing destination. You have to
this
allow.
Or something better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then the intuition comes in and you're like, I don't know. I'm supposed to turn right. I don't know where it's supposed to lead me. I'm supposed to be in this room.
I don't know. Andrea, we're supposed to go to Dallas. And we met Cari.
Yeah.
And here we are.
Here we are.
And everything is it's so funny how it's all lining up. The timing, what we're talking about, all of it. This is the message that Brooke and I needed to hear today. And I know so many people listening are going to be like, how do I find Cari? She's in Iowa? What? She's in Iowa? So where can people, but she's moving out of Iowa soon, but where can people find you, follow you, get some coaching from you, tap into all of this goodness? Where can they find you?
Okay, so Cari Kenzie website, Instagram, you can find me there. Tried to keep it really super simple. And then we have a community and a membership on Shift. So it's ISHIFT.life. Come and join us there because we are all about just empowering people in who they are, in the amazingness, setting them on their own charted course of leadership, really elevating and evolving and living a life out of love as opposed to fear.
Yeah, Cari's doing a lot of work. You have multiple businesses, lots of things going on, podcast, so many different things. And so do a deep dive into her website to read more about her, to contact her, because it's powerful stuff that you're doing in lots of different ways and lots of different avenues. I'm so happy you took time to be here because People need to know you. And I love that we're on your podcast too, so we can be a part of your community. I think we're the type of women that are like, the more the merrier. Let's uplift each other. Let's share each other's stories. Let's get people thinking and empowered and living life on fire, because that's the way to be, Ray.
Heck yeah. I love it.
Baby. Oh, all right, Cari, hate to see you go. We got to wrap up the show. So 3 gold stars for our listeners. Your 3 takeaways or tips? What would you give?
3 top tips.
You know, if you could sit in silence for 30 seconds, if you could just take 3 deep breaths, focus those breaths into your heart space and quiet your mind, you'd be amazed at what could come up. And then, you know, if you have the ability, when you have the ability, because we all have the ability to do that, the thought that comes up, get a little curious around it. Curiosity, I think, is the key to living, right? It's the key to understanding, to seeing the next step, to growing, to shifting, to following that intuition, right? So it's taking the deep breaths, getting present, having curiosity around the different things. And then, you know what? Just take some freaking action. Take some action. Be bold. Be courageous. And know, you know what? You can't screw it up.
I love that. Those are great tips. And we can all do it. And we all need to slow down enough to do it. The first step is, like she said, 30 seconds. If you can't find 30 seconds for yourself, that's where we're going to keep trying to start, okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Up next is Unleashing Ivy, which this whole episode has been surprise questions. So we've got some more, just what Brooke and I are specifically curious about. And mine is going to be around parenting. You have 3 kids.
I do.
And I know we talked about how they're all so unique, and you are so unique, and you've had such a unique path. So I'm curious, with your kids, how you empower them to listen to their intuition and not, you know, as this person that's trying to guide them and show them what life looks like. How do you balance that, giving them direction versus allowing them to listen to their intuition?
So I will say the very first thing that I say this to my kids all the time, and my poor daughter harps on, I harp on her. She's like, I know, Mom. It's this: know your worth, honor your truth, and choose you. Always. Always. You're worthy. And so each of them knows that they're worthy. Like, that is like the first and foremost thing. And you have to honor your truth. I would say my kids have, they've benefited so much just because of the work that I have done on myself. Like, we have the ability to heal generations just by healing ourselves. So I've seen a lot shift with them, and I will empower them in their own curiosity by asking them the question. I treat them like I will treat my clients, and I just ask them the questions. Like, my son one day, he was at a basketball game, and he got done, and it was not his game. Okay. And he gets in the car, and I go, dude, what happened to your confidence? And he's like, I don't know. And I said, when did you lose it? And he goes, 2 games ago. And I was like, okay. So we just sat, and I asked him questions around it, and I helped him to be able to navigate his own mind to understand what was going on and what was coming up for him. Like, I don't give advice. I don't even give advice to my own kids. I ask them the questions, and I help them to be able to figure it out. I think that's how we empower. Like, yes, there's moments where I have to be like, dude, probably not your play, right? Like, maybe we need to look at this a little bit different way. But they're creative, amazing beings. Actually, quite honestly, you guys, kids are way more intuitive than we are. And I think they're a lot more awakened and evolved.
And I want to add too, that you create a presence and a warmth, and that you're available to be there for them testing their intuition out.
Yes.
You know, I
you
think
have to hold that space. You have to give them space to be able to do that. And I think if you're coming in to try and fix something, kids know, and they don't want that, right? I mean, yes, they want you to be there. Yes, they want to know they're important. Yes, they want you. If there's a moment where you need to step in, then you step in. But really, it's just in holding the space. Allow them to navigate through the thing they need to navigate through.
How do you navigate that with clients when they're coming to you because they want to fix something? This isn't my question. I'm just curious.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. I hold the space for them and I ask them the questions and I help them to be able to discover within themselves. That's the problem that we've gotten into as a society is we're constantly looking for that validation and the answers to come from outside of ourselves. We hire the coach because I want to come to you and I want you to tell me what I need to do in order to make my business better. Well, it's crap. I can't tell you what you need to do in order to make your business better. You already know what you need to do. I just need to help you figure that out. Right? Because I can call 5 girlfriends and I can ask all 5 girlfriends, hey, what do you think I should do in this situation? And they're all going to give me a different answer, right? And I'm going to follow 2 of them because they agreed. And then it's going to lead me down a path. That's not my path. Am I going to be upset with myself? No, I'm going to be pissed at my girlfriends because they took me down the wrong path. And how could you not have known?
I feel like this is good parenting advice too.
It
Like
just
when you're going to be a
is.
new mom and you're like trying to figure it out because you've never been a mom before. And it's like, all you want is to figure out, oh, she's a good mom, so I'm going to do what she did. And it doesn't work.
It never works.
It doesn't work because you are you and your kids are all individually themselves. And so I feel like that's something I've learned as a mom is like, I think I need this model to show me the way. And it's like, no, you don't.
No.
You know what you need to do.
And even with your kids, they're all different.
Yes.
All of your kids are different. So, and you have to learn how to navigate each one of them to honor their truth.
And you're going to mess it up.
And you're going to mess it up.
And then you're going to show them that you're human. And
Yes.
then you're going to do it again. And then they're going to love you more for it because you own your shit.
Yes, that is exactly it.
You know, sometimes I'm like, oh gosh, I'm surrounded by so many moms that having kids and becoming a mom, I'm terrified because I realize how hard it is. And then I'm like, damn, I'm so lucky to be around so many moms like you two. You know, it's just who you surround yourself with. And also the magic of empowering questions.
Yes.
Empowered questions.
Yes.
And you talk, Cari, a lot about when you're not feeling well, or you can going back to what you said earlier about value, you being sick, it has something to do with value. So I'm curious for me and everyone listening, when you do notice your health is off a little, what are some of those questions you ask yourself to get you back on track? You said your insomnia went away, your cold went away. So give us the secrets.
You always have to look at the things that are happening in your life. Okay, so if I could have a client come to me. Could have
Pretend it's Brooke with chronic
Kids.
gut health conditions.
Yeah. let's pretend. Let's pretend. So the question would always be, you want to go back to when it began, right? When it began. That's one way you can look at it. I can go, okay, so when did it very first start occurring for you? And then you will go back to that time period and you might be like, well, nothing specific was happening around that time period. I can't really remember, right? And then I'll ask a couple of more questions, but it'll open something up to you. It is always, illnesses begin in a moment shortly after the triggering event. Okay. So you asked that question even for my cold, right? So my business partner was like, so yeah, I was really curious, Cari, what was happening like 72 hours before that cold happened? Right. And I'm like,
72 hours.
Yeah, seriously. Right. Cancers, 7 years. Go back about 7-8 years when it comes to cancer. And you'll literally figure out like what was happening in life around that time period. Now, if you can't go back to that time period, then I'll go, okay, so just tell me. My clients, like, I'll get them on the phone. I'm like, so what's happening? Like, what's going on? Like, we're just chit-chatting or catching up? No, you're going to communicate to me, like, based on the situations that are happening, right? I've got this conversation going on. I've got this thing going on. So I had a woman who called me up because she lost her voice during COVID. She got COVID and then she lost her voice. And she's a singer. And she's supposed to be in Dublin in June. And she's like, I have to get my voice back. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, doctors tell me I won't get it back. And I go, well, first of all, well, that's crap. Like, don't believe it, right? You get to create whatever it is you want to create. And so I said, well, so like, tell me what's going on. And she was telling me about work and how she was having this conversation with her manager. And she told him, she's like, yeah, well, you know, if you put a lot of pressure on me, I'm just going to shut down. And then she goes back to these other situations. And then she comes back and I looked at her and I go, do you want to know why you created it? She goes, what? And I go, if you put pressure on me, I'm going to shut down. And her eyes she was like, and I went, yeah, you shut down your voice. So if you look at the thing, you will actually speak out the reason why you've created something in your life. This is where everything's up for play. Everything's up for grabs. Like if you can start asking those questions, you will discover what's holding something in place.
So fascinating.
Does that answer
Where's
your
your brain
question?
going?
So I will tell you just because, so the gut issues that happen within the gut are a lot of abuse, holding on to pain. And when I say abuse like this, people are always like, oh, but I haven't. Okay. Self-esteem, honey. Was your self-esteem ever diminished? Ever? Like somebody said something to you in elementary school, or, something happened with a teacher, or any of those types of situations, any kind of diminishing of the self-esteem, the body will take on as abuse. And we tend to store it in the abdomen.
And so how do you release it?
You go back and you have to figure out, like, what was the abuse? Why do I need to hold on to it? And what is it that I'm doing that's causing me to continually abuse myself? Because the patterns that have been brought on by other people, if they're no longer there, you'll do it to yourself. You'd never think. You'd be like, why would I ever? That was my insomnia thing, right? I went in, I was literally doing what I thought was best. I was getting these just subcutaneous, like, kind of like flu shots. Okay. But it was for Epstein-Barr, and I'd gone up and I'd gotten this, and I came back and I got sick again afterwards. And the gal that I was working with at the time looked at me and she goes, why do you have to keep punishing yourself? And I was like, what? I'm not punishing myself. She's like, yeah, but every time you feel fine, and then you go up and you get these shots and you get sick again. Why do you have to keep punishing yourself? So it's just having somebody look at something and ask a question where you're like, oh, I didn't realize I was doing that. Then the insomnia was gone overnight.
I feel like this is the episode you got to listen back to, and then you got to ask yourself those questions and sit with them. So I feel like we're going to have to circle back and figure out what our patterns are telling us. Because I'm thinking of like 5 different ones that I have that I keep getting in the same pattern of, where I'm like, again, here I am back in defense instead of offense. And what am I doing with organization, or what am I doing with this, where it's like, I am creating this, and what's it for?
How is this serving me?
Yeah.
Because there ultimately is.
It's ultimately serving you.
And I'm thinking of one right now, and I'm just going to throw out there because I don't like to be vague, and I want to give people examples. I think that I, every once in a while, go in this little rut of being super unorganized with my time, so that I can rely a little bit more on my partner, and he can show up for me in a way that I haven't had somebody show up for me. I'm just like piecing this together right now. Yeah. And he does. And I get the validation that I have a really good partner, and he will catch me if I fall. I'm going to cry. But like, I do this, and he picks up the pieces, and then I get back on track. And I'm like, I think I need to like allow him to prove himself to me, and he keeps doing it, and then it keeps validating that I'm with the right person. So I think I need to remember that, so I can stop getting unorganized. Just stay organized.
Such a good point, right? I mean, I look back at this morning when I talked about, here's this amazing hotel room that I created. Why no hairdryer?
Yeah.
Why can't it be too good?
Ooh.
That just came to, I was like, why can't it be too good? Why can't it be that good, right? So we'll create these like little stumbling blocks, these little pieces where it's like, but if it's too good.
And again, it's an opportunity to learn.
It is.
I'm just learning that. And like, that's not painful work to do. I mean, I cried, but I always cry because I'm feeling so deeply that I love him so much, and that he does show up for me, that this is kind of fun work. It makes life more interesting. It's like putting a puzzle together over and over.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding me?
And the puzzle keeps changing.
Yes.
Because you're changing and doing all kinds of weird shit in your subconscious mind that you're like,
it's like
it's a fun game.
How do you stay a normal functioning human in society when a lot of people haven't done this work? So you're like up here because you are looking at things so deep.
Here's the thing. You have such amazing compassion for other people. Like, it completely shifts you out of that judgment and out of that bias, because I understand and I see myself as that creative being. Like, I am wickedly interesting. Sit me down in my own mind as opposed to in front of a Netflix thing any day, because this is way more entertaining. But when I do that, I have such compassion and love for myself, because I have acceptance. I can see, and I'm like, oh, I see why I did that, or why I created that. So when I'm walking down the street, or I'm having a conversation with somebody, or, an employee or somebody that I've worked with, and I have the ability to observe, I see what their subconscious is doing, because I have the ability to have awareness within myself. And when I see that in somebody else, I go, oh, I know why they're doing that thing. I can totally see it. Yeah. It's not mine to fix, right? I can have compassion for it. I can see it. Then I just get to decide whether or not I want to play with it, right? Do I want to be in that game with that person? No, not really. Like, I love you, and I think that's awesome, right? Like, do you? but I just don't want to play that game anymore.
Freeing.
It's so freeing.
Oh, okay. Last question, Cari. If you could go back and tell younger Cari one thing, what age would you choose and what would you tell her?
Oh my gosh. So I don't know why the age 8 came up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 8. And I would just say, keep going. Keep going. I wouldn't change anything. I wouldn't go back and tell her how to shift something or how to do something different or take a different path. I would just say, keep going. Because I truly do believe this. I think every decision that I have ever made, that anybody ever makes, is just a beautiful reflection of who we're destined to be. And I wouldn't change one of them.
Love that. Awesome, Cari. Well, this is fun.
So good.
I love this conversation so much. I want to have more of them. And we're just so grateful for you that you brought your body on the dance floor and moved around with us, and that you're being you, and the lack of judgment, the warmth, the curiosity. It's so intriguing and fun. And we're just glad that you're part of our circle and that we'll continually learn from you. I'm so happy that you're here today and that now we get to share you with our audience. They're going to love you.
Oh my gosh. I love you ladies. This is so fun. Yeah, we could sit here all day.
This is just the beginning.
I know.
I love it.
I know.
Okay, Cari, we love our listeners with a piece of gold, a quote that speaks to you. Would you please share yours?
Oh, I can't remember the exact words of it, but it is in the essence of this, that the greatest burden that we will carry is the untold stories that lie within us. And that's Maya Angelou. And it's like truth.
So true.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold.
We want to thank you and encourage you to celebrate yourself for taking the time to learn and get inspired in your one beautiful life. And if this podcast means something to you, it would mean so much to us if you'd be willing to take 30 seconds to help support our mission to keep bringing you inspiring stories and guests.
First, following the podcast is important because it helps you never miss an episode. To do this, just go to the Ivy Unleashed podcast show page on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts, and then just tap the plus sign in the upper right-hand corner or click on follow.
While you're there, if you'd be so kind to give us a 5-star rating and review and share your favorite episode with a friend, we'd be so grateful for your support.
We are thrilled you're here and are so happy that you're taking time to prioritize your wellness, self-discovery, and growth with us.